Kia ora, everyone. Thank you guys so much. Oh, that is so loud and sharp. For coming along to my talk today. Spending a lovely Saturday afternoon where it's very sunny inside, listening to me rant is going to be really fun. Today, I'm going to get really nerdy and really quite passionate about statistics, specifically about female statistics. And together, we're going to explore what the leaky pipeline of talent in the game industry is, which sort of explores how women excel in school and early careers, but sort of vanish by mid-career and never make it to senior. So, kia ora, nice to meet you. My name is Paris. I'm a market researcher by trade. I work at PickPock. I was really lucky to be the only intern that PickPock's done. And so I was put through the education to early career pipeline quite early on. And I'm super, super passionate about making the games sort of more inclusive industry. And I definitely think that makes me a woke feminist, and I'm quite proud to carry that label. So we're going to do a rewind back to 2023 when I did another feminist talk, because that might be my special interest. And I talked a lot about female-centric design in game dev and its importance to our industry and to our people. And that was about building games. But today's sort of TED Talk is going to be about who makes the games and potentially who's leaving before they can get a chance to make them. Before we get into it, I feel like I want us all to be on the same page, and I feel like I might need to clarify what gender parity means. I'm going to be referencing it a fair bit in the beginning of this talk. So the World Economic Forum started tracking gender parity with its Global Gender Gap Index back in 2006, so about 2 decades ago. The index measures progress in closing the gender gap across 4 dimensions. So that's economic participation and opportunity, educational attainment, health and survival, and political empowerment. Why do we need to measure the gap? This is something you'll hear me say lots throughout the next half an hour, is that you can't manage what you don't measure. So the report tracks access and opportunity needed to achieve full economic potential, serving as a really good benchmarking tool for policy and for business action. Measuring the global gender gap is essential because no economy, regardless of its level of development, has ever achieved full gender parity. And no industry, regardless of its high representation of women, has, such as healthcare, beauty, cosmetics, retail, education, has also ever achieved full gender parity, which means the equal contribution and leadership across all of these 4 dimensions, not just high numbers in certain areas. Cool, we all on the same track? It's a lot of information. So to really set the scene, we are world leaders in gender equality. We rank in the top 5 globally for gender parity, and we do pretty well on all fronts. We did, however, drop a place from 4th to 5th this past year, and that's due to a decrease in ministerial positions, so because of our government change. And then there's a weaker economic participation for women, and that's due to a recession. But we do pretty well. Now that we have that covered, to really understand what our industry looks like, I think we need to put us in the context or the bigger picture of Aotearoa. So in Aotearoa, 52% of women have tertiary qualifications compared to just 40% of men. So super strong foundations. But in games, in 2024, 28% of our devs identified as women. That was a 6% bump from 2023. And if you keep up with statistics like I do on LinkedIn, you'll see that we did just get another drop of some really fun 2025 statistics, and we've now gone up to 29%. But that does, however, mean that men still roughly dominate 3 out of 4 roles in our industry. And when we look at our Indigenous people, in 2023, they only made up 5% of game developers. And so by that statistic, they only made up 1.4% in 2023. And we haven't actually had an update on how many Māori work in game development in 2025 or 2024. It just sort of feels like our sector might not have caught up to our nation's sort of parity ideals, and I think this contrast really sets the stage that New Zealand can crush it on gender equality broadly, but in games we've likely got a problem. Now we have that all covered. What is the leaky pipeline? It's a metaphor for the continuous loss of women at each stage of a career path. So Clark Bickenstaff in 2005 coined the term in an academic context. The phrase extends this pipeline metaphor, which is the educational to career progression that we see. And this highlights the specific issue of women disproportionately leaking or exiting various stages of their professional and academic pathways. You might recognize it because it's often used in the context of STEM, the STEM industry. So this is what I want you to picture. So it goes from education to early career, mid-career, late career, and potentially C-suite. Leaks occur when women drop out. So in education and early career, women have a really strong start. So we perform really well academically, like I said. In many countries globally, women earn just under 60% of all bachelor's degrees, and New Zealand follows that trend. And women make up 33% of our STEM students. All in all, we're doing really well in education. Entry-level roles, like once we're in the workforce, women do land jobs in games. Thanks to outreach and diversity efforts, studios have brought in more female talent recently, hence the 6% bump that we've seen. I'm clearly evidence of that as well, and I know many of my peers are. New Zealand game teams, there are some around the country where women even comprise near parity among the juniors. Their entire junior team is almost women or non-men. But there seems to be this mid-career vanishing act. So despite these really healthy starts, many women sort of drop off or vanish by mid-career. Industry surveys and research revealed this sort of female participation sort of ends around the 5 to 10 experience mark. For example, in the broader tech world, 56% of women leave their tech careers at the mid-level stage, and that's more than twice the quit rate of men. This often coincides with prime career building years, which is like your late 20s to your mid 30s, exactly when future leaders are forged, tapped, and asked to be promoted. And so for the game industry signals, we see hints of a leaky sort of mid-tier games as well. So the average female game dev skews younger than her male counterpart, that's 32 to 35, suggesting that far few women actually retain in our industry. But what about senior roles? So the really good news is that women who stay can rise. 2 in 5 senior roles of senior leaders in New Zealand game studios are women. That's a statistic that came out at the beginning of this year. That's 40%. It's heaps better than many tech fields. And it shows that when women are attained, they do attain leadership. My only query with that is we don't actually know what a senior leader entails. Is that a manager? Is that a senior manager? Is that a dev head? Is that a C-suite position? It might just be because I'm super nosy, but I actually just want to know more. So the result that we see is this hourglass shape, so relatively decent representation at junior and even some in senior, but then a squeeze in the middle. And we really risk losing the next generation of female leaders in games if we can't identify why they leave. So why do women leave? Well, we can break down the causes. Research points to a mix of societal, cultural, and workplace factors that push women out of STEM and game dev. And these factors all kind of create a perfect storm, and I'm going to go through them. So first is work culture and bias. The games industry has a historically masculine culture that can often make women feel like they don't belong. When I first started this talk and I did a big old Google in Google Scholar, it came up with like 1.6 million results. And this is just maybe the first 2 pages of that. It's, academic studies, articles, publications, talking and analyzing this workplace culture and bias against women in our industry. The next is sort of the marginalization or discrimination during internships and first jobs. It's that sort of first impression. We're often taught that your first impression at a first job or at an interview is really important. I also believe that a company's first impression on you is also really important. And it's crucial, regardless if what gender you are or gender expression you identify with, that you want your first job to be good enough to keep you. The next one, sadly, is discrimination and harassment. So I don't know if anyone saw the headlines on July this year. 3 Ubisoft former execs were found guilty of sexual and psychological harassment to their younger workforce and employees. And it still remains a really significant barrier for women and non-men in games. Whilst the industry has made a lot of progress, these sort of recent events sort of remind us that there is ongoing issues. I mean, 10 years ago, we saw Gamergate, and that also made women feel super unwelcome and unsafe in the game development industry. And I don't actually know if that behavior's ever really gone away. And so whilst a growing number of studios have great formal policies, most respondents in the International Game Developers Association Developers Survey from 2021 to 2023 found that these weren't really adequately enforced, these policies. And a lot of respondents said no when asked if there was equal treatment and opportunity for all in the industry. The next one is life events and career breaks. Societal norms continue to put caregiving burdens on women, creating this major reason for a vanishing act we see in mid-career. Typically in late 20s, mid-30s, you know, a lot of people want to settle down and have families, and that caregiving burden often falls to women. So Dr. Amanda Sterling released a survey and a report earlier this year of New Zealand women in leadership, which highlights that motherhood is still the most significant dropping off point for women in the workforce. Her research really drawed on the experience of these women across all industries, and found that mothers often feel pressure to perform as if they do not have children, and that they have to hide embodied experiences. And that means like pregnancy and breastfeeding, postpartum depression. And whilst policies like flexible work from home are really well intentioned, they're not enough, according to this report. I mean, take our highest level of leadership as well. When Jacinda Ardern was Prime Minister, she cited that she exited because of family and lack of energy to continue in her job. I believe that that's the motherhood penalty striking again. And the last one is the lack of role models and support. So according to a McKinsey Women in the Workplace report from last year, it sort of explores the role model and support of women through each career stage. It found less than 50% of entry-level employees are women across the firms, and it drops off to less than 30% when they reach C-suite. I keep jumping from using NZ game stats in a New Zealand context, a wider context, STEM industry, and then larger corporate. And that is fundamentally because we don't have enough data to understand our own industry's pitfalls. That's just a fact, and that's okay. This is an issue, but it's not something to feel bad about. I really want to emphasize that that's not why I'm doing this talk. It's not to rant at people. It's you can't fix what you don't measure, right? So this major issue compounding the pipeline problem is the lack of basic data tracking that we have in our industry. So many studios, especially smaller or indie, I don't believe rigorously measure who they hire, promote, and who leaves, which means researchers sort of struggle to understand this because our industry doesn't have a sort of regulation with that. Unlike larger corporate sectors in New Zealand, game dev has no widespread standard for reporting diversity or retention metrics. The New Zealand Game Developers Association's surveys and reports are phenomenal, but they do only offer a snapshot. In saying that, you should actually fill out the salary one that has been floating around. There is a couple up the front with QR codes. Please do that. But basically, we might be unknowingly sabotaging our entire industry by letting talent slip away unnoticed. For example, if women are disproportionately leaving one studio, would management actually know if there isn't sort of a retention metric in place? So to plug the leaks, studios of all sizes, even indies, should should start surveying and tracking key people metrics in a systematic way. So that's looking at employee turnover by gender and other groups, tracking demographics within each career stage, using in-studio surveys to gauge how included and satisfied employees actually feel, and having an open and honest exit interview. So understanding if people are leaving because of reasons that I've mentioned, discrimination, harassment, lack of role model, we should be able to be honest when we leave. Because collecting data isn't just about internal culture, it also prepares us for broader trends that we will see that could potentially disproportionately impact certain groups. Really timely example was something that we all love to talk about, AI, and AI automation. So without tracking roles and redundancies by gender, we might miss that women could be bearing the brunt of certain changes. So a recent UN report that was released earlier this year warns that jobs traditionally done by women are at a higher risk of transformation or replacement by AI. And in high-income countries, which New Zealand is a part of, about 9.6% of female-held jobs is predicted to be affected by generative AI, compared to only 3.5% of male-held jobs. Why? Because AI is rapidly automating administrative, clerical, and content-producing tasks. Roles often like receptionists, HR coordinators, market content writers, fields where women are often a large proportion of workers. The implication for our studios is if your company uses AI tools to, say, automate customer support or QA testing, are the roles on the chopping block largely held by women or other marginalised genders? It is quite possible. And during layoffs or restructuring, those could be cut first in the name of automation efficiency. So already Gen AI can write basic ad copy or design assets, which threatens roles like junior content designers or concept artists, fields where many women work. Which also cracks the pipeline from that early career skill to middling. So your generative AI, who is your junior, can't often graduate to your mid-level. But surveying our companies and workforce data, we can actually catch such patterns early. So for instance, if women are predominantly in roles slated for automation, we can develop a plan to reskill or transition for them. If they have to go, they have to go. But rather than simply letting AI exacerbate the gender gap, we could use data to future-proof our industry by ensuring no group really gets left behind as technology evolves. So once we have the data, what do we do with it? Well, we measure, analyze, and then execute. So think of this as our repair manual for the leaky pipeline. We're going to identify the leaks, so that's using key metrics from surveys to see where women and non-men are dropping out. If noticing fewer people in certain departments, it's building internships or apprentices to refill that pipeline. Secondly, it's improve early experiences. So first impressions really matter. Mentorships with senior women and senior leaders can anchor new hires and reduce early exits. I am really lucky to have my manager and then my div head both be women. If they weren't there, I don't know if I would have stayed as long as I have. Bias-proof promotions. So if data shows women aren't moving up, maybe let's check the process. It's making promotions transparent and based on clear criteria. It's like there's no point having little hidden boss fights that you can't actually even enter unless you have the right parts. And then plan for AI. Women are concentrated in roles and risk of automation. We've seen the statistics. They were on a couple of slides ago. So it's offering pathways into future-proofing areas like production or even AI oversight. It's training those people to be able to prompt so that they're not competing with AI, they can help build it up and not be cut. And finally, my favorite point, which is collaborate as an industry. One studio's data is not enough. If everyone contributes anonymized insights, we can see the full map and patch leaks together. So if you have sat here for the past 25 minutes and gone, I actually don't know why I'd go through all this effort to strengthen the pipeline, it doesn't affect me. It's a lot of information. I'm feeling really I have one word for you on why we should do this: money, specifically making more money. So 3 words. But an example that I managed to find was an Australian report that showed firms from 2009 to 2021 in a global context, and they wanted to track the behavior and performance to see if there's any correlation between diversity and performance. This sort of mandatory mandated disclosures saw female management, so female representation, climb from 12% to 26% in a decade. It's pretty phenomenal. In a business case, diverse leadership actually gained 30% more profit margin and a 30% better return on equity over 5 years in this report. And investors gained a 4% annual return premium from backing gender diverse firms. And to bring it into the context of games, if our demographic of games consumers is evolving with women making almost 50% of it, so the player base becoming more diverse, doesn't that mean diverse leadership is better equipped to serve and give in to the demand? It's actually not charity work to fix the pipeline. It's actually quite smart, and it's a good business proposition. So just to reiterate on why it actually does matter, you can't fix what you don't measure. And right now, I think too many studios and our game industry is actually flying blind, and we don't know who's leaving, why, when, or how. Even simple surveys give us a window into retention, engagement, and sentiment, and that's our early warning system. Without it, leaks go unnoticed, and the roof is going to cave in. So then once we identify the leaks, once we've got the data, we can zoom in. Is there a drop-off happening at internships, at promotions, at mid-career? A data-driven approach means no more guessing. Instead of saying, we think women leave around 5 years in, we can better show it, act early, and fix the exact weak points in the pipeline. And then execute. So this is the end game. It's using data to create studios where diverse talent just doesn't get through the door, but stays, grows, and then can lead. A resilient pipeline means a resilient industry, one where we're not constantly backfilling lost talent, but actively building on strong foundations. And that not only strengthens individual studios, but the whole games industry as we know it and we love it. This sort of QR code there is a link to a survey that I have written based upon the International Game Developers Association and what we provide here in New Zealand. And it's basically a starter tool. I find the hardest thing to do when creating stuff is that first paint stroke. It's actually getting started is the hardest part. So if I can solve that for you, then Merry Christmas. So it's a starter tool so anyone can begin collecting data in a meaningful way right away. Together, we can build a more equitable and sustainable games industry. And in doing so, we can ensure New Zealand not only survives, but thrives, and our industry is powered by the full breadth of talent and leadership that it actually deserves. Thank you. We do have 6 minutes left, I believe, so if there are any questions, or we can just have a little chat after, which is fine. Yes?
What was the most surprising thing? Oh, I'll just shout. Okay. What was the most surprising thing you uncovered while you were researching for this talk?
I definitely think it was how much data there was on this motherhood penalty. I always knew that, when women want to have kids, they have to give up a lot to do that. But I didn't realize how it still affected them so much when they went back into their career. And so Dr. Sterling's report at the beginning of this year was really cool. And I actually emailed with her back and forth about it. It was very, very interesting, yeah.
Speaking of the motherhood penalty, my assumption would be that part of the reason why there is a motherhood penalty is pay disparity, because if you have a heterosexual couple where one of them is going to stay at home, most likely the one who stays at home is the one who is paid less. Did that data talk about that at all? Were there any other factors? I'd just be curious to know more.
Yes, so it did touch on this whole idea that women pause their careers to have kids and then their partners get paid more, and other peers that are a similar level that don't have kids can then gain promotions and get paid more. So there's a pay disparity thing. In contrast, there was not a lot of policies for like paternity leave. So I think that also seemed to play a role in this report. So if young men, young dads weren't getting the ability to leave and stay home and let mum go back to work, it also raised that inequality. Yeah. Very cool. Thank you.